To look at this further, we're joined by Karyn Maughan, who's a specialist legal journalist. Karyn, very good to talk to you again. Very interesting choice of words used by Advocate Moses Kakani. He says, we are obligated to tell you why we're going to excuse ourselves so that it's not called a walkout. In your mind, what would you exactly define it as? If there was no permission sought, is it or is it not a walkout?
In many respects, this reminded me in a lot of ways of that moment where former SAA board chairperson asked Raymond Zondo why she couldn't name a specific secret witness. And he explained to her that he'd given an order, and she thereafter proceeded to name this man 5 times in direct contravention of what Zondo had said. A similar scenario playing itself out today, where Paul Pretorius, the evidence leader, made it very clear that no one in the inquiry could simply leave without obtaining DCJ Raymond Zondo's permission, and the inquiry then being adjourned to sort of plot a way forward, at which moment the legal team and the former president choose to leave. And I think it's very overtly, probably the most profound act of defiance that we have seen or experienced in this inquiry thus far.
I want to look at the argument advanced by Zuma's lawyer, Advocate Kakani, accusing Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo of playing judge and referee on the application to recuse himself. But wasn't it always going to be the Commission Chair who was going to make the decision?
Well, their issue is slightly more nuanced. They're saying essentially that there was a dispute of fact between Zuma and Zondo over the exact nature of their relationship. That essentially Zuma had said, that he and Zondo had enjoyed a long relationship, that had started as a professional one but developed into a close personal friendship, and that, that they were actually quite close personal relationship, and that this had sort of involved Zuma and Zondo conferring over the possible implications that their relationship could have on Zondo's judicial career. Of course, Zondo is saying quite categorically when he responded on Monday to that statement that they did not have a friendship, that they had a cordial relationship, but it was nothing more than that, and denying that conversation. Now, in his ruling today, he said that he did not believe that the relationship that existed could be seen as a close personal relationship or one that would have affected him in his making his determination on the evidence. And that is why Moses Kakani is essentially saying, on this issue of the personal relationship, you have acted as both a witness and a judge in this matter, and that is why we are reporting you to the JSE.
But I still go back to that point, Karyn, because for me it boggles my mind in the sense that, okay, so legally could they have applied outside the Commission for the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo to recuse himself? This is precisely because that matter had already been ventilated. The former president says not necessarily by himself, but it did come to the fore. So this was the person who was always going to make the determination of whether or not he ought to recuse himself, and it would be on the basis of those facts or the argument that has been advanced.
Well, it was really after Zondo then refuted what Zuma had said that we saw Zuma then filing that affidavit that resulted in this judgment being delayed first until the afternoon and then until this morning. And then this angry reaction, because obviously the underlying supposition is that one of these people is either deliberately or accidentally not telling the truth. Now, Jacob Zuma is adamant that that is not him. But I think what we must understand is that there is going to be some form of legal challenge now. And we are seeing a sort of pathology within the Zuma team of putting everything on record that they are going to bring in that legal challenge in this recusal. And this issue of the personal relationship is clearly one that they're going to exploit. But the issue for me is going to the JSE to lay a potential misconduct complaint against Zondo over this. Essentially one that, they may argue is grounds for an impeachment. We don't know at this stage. Really represents a significant moment in the life of this inquiry, in that it's effectively a direct attack Zondo himself.
Okay, so just very briefly on the chances of success of that JSC complaint, very briefly on that, Karyn. And lastly, Advocate Moses Kakane was saying that the commission is poorer for not having the Guptas there to give their contribution to these allegations. Could the same then be said for former President Jacob Zuma if he does refuse to go back to the commission?
Well, I think on the first one, we know Lucky Montana, the former PRASA CEO, lodged a similar complaint against, DCJ Raymond Zondo over his conduct in the inquiry that was summarily dismissed by Chief Justice Mogoeng. I think Lucky Montana is appealing that. On the issue of the Guptas, interestingly enough, we understand that their lawyers have been conferring with them on the possibility that given the fact that people like Dudumieni are giving video evidence, they may well have make a second application for the right to do that, because they've always maintained that they want to give their testimony. Ultimately, on Zuma, of course, the inquiry will be poorer for not having his explanation for these 9 years in office and the various allegations that have been leveled against him. Possibly also our democracy will be poorer as well, because ultimately this inquiry was intended to be an exercise in oversight and accountability. And it is indeed a sad day that the head of state no longer feels that it would be appropriate or, for him to actually come to that inquiry and be accountable for the decisions that he has made, many of which continue to have repercussions in our democracy even today.
All right, thanks a lot, Karyn. Specialist legal journalist Karyn Maughan on the events at the State Capture Commission earlier on.